what happened was, I suppose, go back to the beginning. About 5 or 6 years ago, I was a liberal European journalist working for the Financial Times in, I suppose that's a tautology, there is no other kind of European journalists, they're all liberal. I was a European journalist working for the Financial Times in Romania, believe it or not, and covering, so it was a story about an evil mining company, which happened to be Canadian as well, which means they're really evil. And they were going to destroy a village and rape the village and rape the villagers and do all these things that we all know mining, that all European journalists know mining companies do. So I went along to cover the story. It was in Transylvania, believe it or not, which is a sort of a coincidence, but you know, but led to lots of nice headlines about vampires and evil mining companies, which you know we all loved. And I got up there and I discovered almost everything the environmentalists were saying was either untrue or exaggerated, and that got us thinking about why are you lying? It's a great story. Why are you exaggerating? Your story is so good. So then we found out then, through Mind Your Own Business, the documentary we did, it's a pattern. It's not just one isolated group of foreign environmentalists in outer Romania. It's happening in Madagascar, it's happening in Chile, it's happening in all these isolated places where white upper class people go and tell brown people what they really think. You know, that's really what it is. You know, and when I was a uber liberal lefty journalist in Ireland, we called that imperialism. When rich white people went to poor countries and told people what to do, they were the imperialists, and now they're wearing woolly jumpers and have facial hair and sandals, and that's only the women. You know, you're still imperialists. You know, you're wearing woolly jumpers. Sorry, folks. You know, by your actions, you may call yourself environmentalists, but you know, people who tell brown people and black people where they can work and what fuel they can use and how they can live, where they can build their roads and what they can do with their natural resources. We call that's imperialism. So, you know, so we need to stop calling environmentalists radicals. They're not radicals. They're the most conservative people I know. They want to go back to this golden age that never existed. They want to preserve people in poverty because poverty is good. They see poverty as a lifestyle, and I see it as a curse. And that's the difference between me and environmentalists, I suppose. People say to me, you got to make fun of Al Gore's electricity bill, which is quite easy to make fun of actually. His electricity bill is, in one of his houses, he has 4 houses, but in one of his houses, his electricity bill is 10 times the American average. And I do like making fun of it. My problem is, I want everyone in Africa to have Al Gore's electricity bill. Can you imagine what a wonderful world this would be if everyone in Africa had Al Gore's electricity bill? It would be the end of poverty. And those idiots who talk about making poverty history, that's the way you make poverty history, is have everyone have a massive electricity bill in Africa, rather than stopping everyone using their natural resources and using their fossil fuels. And now I've gone off on a tangent, and I'm supposed to show you some of the film. Sorry about that, I just got excited there. But what I meant to say was, that, so here I was, having discovered this is what environmentalists do. I went to the... People then come up and said, you've got to do this story about DDT, how they banned DDT, and all these people in Africa died. That's the other great untold environmental story, is how they banned DDT and malaria shot up. So then we started to research that, and then we thought, you know what, DDT, it happened in the 60s and 70s, still happening, but it's sort of, the World Health Organization has said we should use DDT again. But then we looked at CO2, you know, CO2 is the new DDT. It's a wonderful, life-giving compound that is essential for life, that is so wonderful, and it's been banned by an emotional, anti-industrial, anti-capitalist campaign by people who should know better. So we decided that let's look at CO2. You have to tell stories too, and you have to make it about people, because you can argue over science, but it's about how it affects the poorest people on the planet is really what's important. And the poorest people in Canada and the poorest people in the developing world. You know, I can pay a bit more for my electricity bill. David Suzuki can pay a bit more for his electricity bill. Al Gore can pay a bit more for his electricity bill. But people who are living on the breadline, people who their jobs depend upon cheap energy, they can't, because their jobs will be exported somewhere where the electricity is cheaper. If we start making fossil fuels more expensive or banning people from using fossil fuels, you're cutting down the hopes and dreams of people in Canada and in the developing world. And they may call themselves left-wing and they may call themselves environmentalists, but it's a really anti-human and anti-progress mentality. So I want to show the trailer first. Or not the trailer, yes, the trailer of the film first. So just to give you a little flavour of the documentary.
I promise you, the day will come.
We really are facing a potentially ecological Armageddon.
It's a real threat, and it's coming. You go on the internet and check it out.
Basically, the problem is cars, coal, and buildings.
It's not going to be painless.
I think we need to freeze it.
I don't think it would be a bad thing for this Earth to warm up. In fact, ice is the enemy of life.
Al Gore gives the impression that sea level is going to rise by 20 feet in the very near future. Now, that is a very disturbing misstatement of the science.
20th century is certainly not the warmest in 1,000 years, and we also have scientific data to show this.
If the factory closed down, this area would die.
You're talking more about 7 million jobs in the United States.
That would bring civilization crashing down to its knees, and hundreds of millions of people would die.
We need industry. If there's going to be a generation to carry on after this one, we have to have it.
Al Gore needs to just go on about his business somewhere else.
A lot of environmental activists still have not come to accept that the humans are also part of the environment.
You're comparing birds with people. You'd rather save the birds and lose the people.
Or do they want to go back to the Dark Ages and the Black Plague?
We're human beings. We all have a right to be here.
I cannot believe that Al Gore has great regard for people, real people.
So that's the trailer. As you can see, there's always a problem when you want to make a documentary about a science issue. Is how much science to put into it and how much of a story to put into it. So, you know, it's important. I think that people who make documentaries that show real science often make because I can't exaggerate like Al Gore. I can't lie like Al Gore. I actually have to tell the truth. I want big environment to be under the same spotlight as big business. And why shouldn't it? They're just as powerful. I recently asked Al Gore about the court case. I don't know how many have seen that on YouTube. I found out that Al Gore was doing a Q&A, which is very unusual for Al Gore because he normally comes, gives a speech and charges about $200,000 for it to ban the press. But I found out it was the Society of Environmental Journalists and he had to give a Q&A. So I joined the Society of Environmental Journalists very quickly. Arrived and sure I was standing first asked the question. So I asked the question about the court case where his movie An Inconvenient Truth was found to have 9 significant errors, and he wouldn't answer it, and I pressed him and he wouldn't answer it, and then the Society of Environmental Journalists came up and cut off my mic. So that's what journalists are, environmental journalists. They see their priority as protecting is he a millionaire or is he a billionaire, a multi-millionaire political activist / businessman, as opposed to allowing a journalist to ask difficult questions. It's I think you need to recognize that environmental journalists are really environmentalists and not journalists. And you were asking about the reaction from people. We've had death threats, we've had threatening letters. I make documentaries with my wife, Anne McElhinney, and we got a letter recently which said, I hope, since you and your wife are so fond of pollution, I hope your children are born handicapped. Lovely, you know. I think people need to not confuse CO2 with pollution. CO2 is not pollution.